Hi, my name's David and I'm going to go through how I made this animation in OnShape and Blender. Okay, so first things first, this is a model of a Pi Wars course called Feed the Fish, and the actual design has been sort of spec'd up in a 2D plan view which we can use here, and we can use this information to design the actual physical course in OnShape. So OnShape is a free CAD tool, and I've just logged in here. So once you log in or create an account, you'll be shown this kind of document screen here. I've got lots of documents that I've made in the past. But basically you can see I've done this Pi Wars course. I actually have previously done like 3 in one document. You can do multiple documents, multiple tabs in each document, but I'll show you just showing one right now. So I'm going to create a new one, and I'm going to create a new document, give it a name, and I'm just going to call this whatever I want. Hit create public document. I am using the free account, so anything I create will be public and other people can hunt for it, search for it, and have a look at it if they want to. Right, okay. So the first thing it will do is go into this kind of screen here. Now the basics are, we have in the view here, this is the 3D view. Up the top we have all of the buttons that we want to be able to use, so these will change depending on what mode we're in, whether we're just editing and viewing in the actual model itself or whether we are inside a sketch. Now I personally like to use this somewhat similar to how people can use SketchUp, where you design a 2D sketch of something and you put that one on a plane. So these are the planes we have here by default. You can create more at different angles and things like that. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to select a plane, and in here you can see on the left hand side it's now selected that one here. So we've got top, front and right. I actually just don't want to see these. You can see this little eye symbol here, and you can untick those and you can hide them. So now I just have that one plane. I'm looking at it from a 3D angle. If I use the middle mouse button, I can pan around. If I use the right mouse button, I can rotate. Now it's kind of a free rotate. I always find it useful to hold the left Alt button and then rotate, and you can see now as I move the mouse around it's keeping it sort of level, and I'm just rotating around the sort of position in the center here. So first things first, so we have our sort of planes up here. And when I create some sketches, they will get added to this. So the way that I would then use this is by drawing the sketches, and then I'm going to use the extrude button here to sort of make sort of pull that shape up, and then I can draw more sketches on that one, pull them out or cut them in however you want to. And we've got this little cube up here, and you can see as I'm moving the rotation around, you can see where you're kind of looking at it from. And if you want to, you can cheat and just hit the button you want to go to and just say look at the top, and it'll rotate down like that. So I've got the plane I want to work on selected, and I'm just going to hit sketch. So now I'm working on this one, and it doesn't matter, I can go outside of this. It's just that was the plane that you're working on. I can make this as big, I can make my design as big or as small as I want, it doesn't matter. So now you can see I'm inside a sketch, and we have some basic drawing tools. So draw a line, draw a rectangle, draw a circle. We've got some arrows next to these. You can drop these down and you've got some options for each one of those. So we've got circle, we've got corner, rectangle, center point and rectangle. So that depends on 2 points basically. I'm going to click and then click to create a rectangle or a center point. So I click and then just drag it out. Same on the circle, you know, center point and a radius effectively, or 3 points or an ellipse, and again same with the arc. Lots and lots of different options. So in this case here, I'm going to use the rectangle. So I'm going to just literally left click once, and it's now actually just sort of let me sort of choose how big I want to do it. Now I know from the Feed the Fish Pi Wars stuff, if I go back to that page, it's going to be 1500 by 1500 millimeters. So I can go in here, and whilst it's rubber banding out, I'm going to assume that these are in millimeters because that's what I've set the units to in this one. And I'm going to left click my second position. It's not the right size, but you can see it's automatically started asking me what the size I want it to be in. Now I don't need to click in that box or anything, but the one that's white at the moment is what it's expecting me to type in. So if I just type 1500, press enter, and suddenly it's made that massive. with a little dimension written on it. And now it's moved to the other one, so I can type in 1500 again, press enter, and now I have a huge box to work from. And I can untick that tool because I don't want to be doing anything more, and now I can select things. I can select the annotation, I can move it around, I can pick this one, move it over, that's fine. If I want to center this whole thing, I'm going to click and drag and select everything. And then I have this option here, linear pattern. If you hit the arrow down on that one, I've got a transform. Now transform basically just means move, rotate, scale, that kind of thing. So what I want to do here is I want to move, this is the origin position and this is the grabber to move the whole thing. So I want to move the origin so it's in the center of this box so that I can then drag that center to match that center there. So let's do that one. So I'm going to click and drag, and as I'm moving the mouse around, it will snap to places like there. That's one center, and that's the other center of that line. And as I move the mouse off that one now, at some point, there we go, it's going to show me it snaps to that one. So it's now in the center of that box. I can left click that box and drag the whole thing over and snap it onto the center there. And then as you can see, the little mouse there has a little green tick on the left mouse button. So if I just click off, it's going to move it for me. So that is the basics of putting that on. So the next thing I want to do is I want to make an offset around this. So I'm going to select everything and I'm going to use the offset command. And now you can see it's instantly putting in an arrow saying offset inwards. And if I sort of zoom in, you can see it's actually put an offset of 5mm inwards. I don't want it to be in this direction, I want it to be out. So I'm going to click that and it's going to go the other way. And I can sort of click and drag that out if I wanted to. I could, once I'm happy with that position, I could say click and say, well actually it's 42mm, I want that to be say 35mm, and click and it'll do that. There we go. So now that's 35mm offset all the way around. Okay, so I'm going to come out of that command here. Right, let's go back to the pie walls. I'm going to move this onto the second screen that I have here so that I can actually see that at all points. Let's do that now. There we go. Right, so I have a variety of lines on this that I want to be able to match. So I have a line going across here, which is where the golf balls would sit on. I have a stop line somewhere in the middle here. I have a box up here, which is the sort of fishbowl box, which is offset from this line up and from the left hand side across. Now I don't know where all those lines are, but I do know the offsets from a specific line. Most of them are offset from this line or from the lines that are offset from the base. So let's do that one. Now I don't want to make actual lines here, I just want to sort of use construction lines. That's something that's temporary, or at least not going to be part of the model. And we have this option here to hit construction. Now if I'm not in any command, I can hit that and it'll not do anything apart from any lines I draw on here afterwards will get drawn dashed, and if I hit escape, it comes out those tools. So it'll come out dashed. If you've got one selected and hit that one, it will invert it. You can just toggle it between construction and non-construction. So in this case, I just don't want that line at all. But now I want to be in a construction line and I want to do an offset. So you can have those two together, and I could select one line, I could select multiple lines. I basically just want to have an offset of this line here in the other direction. So I'll click that once and it'll go the other way. And it is 550mm offset from that line. So if I left click once now, it'll take that thinking I want just a 5mm, but I want 550mm. And it'll put that line there. And then I have, so that's the center of that line where the golf balls is going to go on. The next thing I want to do is put an offset from this line up by 200mm, which is where the stop line is going to be. So I'm still in those commands. I can just select that one again, change the direction, left click, and again that's going to be 200mm. And that'll put that clearly in the dead center of the box. Now the next thing I have is the actual feed the fish rectangle up here, and that the front face of that is 360mm off. So I can select this one, change the angle, change the direction, sorry, left click again, and this one is, as I said, 360mm from here, and the left hand side of this rectangle that's going to be up here is 650mm. So that's how I can do that kind of thing. The other way I can do that is by just drawing a rectangle and then offsetting it from that if I want to do. But what I'm going to do is, yeah, actually no, let's do that. I'm going to get rid of that one. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to draw another rectangle in here. I'm not in the construction because this is going to be the actual box. I'm going to draw it approximately where it needs to be. And I know this is 200 mil by 200 mil. It's a nice square. So I can come out of that tool. Now I know that that is set at those offsets, those widths, but I also know it's offset from this line and from this line. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the dimension tool. So I know there's going to be a dimension between this line and that line, and now it's, as soon as I click those two lines, it's now offering me an option here. So I know this should be 360. Press enter and it'll set it to be 360. And the same, I can click this one once and you can see I can set that dimension, or I can select another line and it'll suddenly choose me that. So I can then select this one and say, well, this one should be 650 mil offset, and it'll move it as it needs to be. So you can kind of constrain things as they need to be, and just drag that one over that side so we can see exactly what's going on. Move these across to somewhat similar to what the actual example was showing us. Okay, so somewhat similarly, there's going to be a box down here again. So I'm going to drag it. So if I start on the line, you see it selects the line, and this means it'll start snapped onto that line. So click here and go out. So I believe this is going to be approximately 500 mil by I think it's 325 is the size of that box. Obviously you can check that. It could actually be, yeah, it could actually be 225. So we can change this here. So 225. It'll set that one, and we could actually change that as well. But this is, I'm going to leave that as 325 because that looks approximately right. I need to set the offset here. Not offset, sorry. I need to set the dimension here. So I need to set the dimension here. So let's go and hit the dimension tool, and I want to set the distance between that line, and I need that to be 150. We can set these as we need them to be here. So again, as I said, we can change these values if we want to. I can make this say 400 by 225 is probably the actual size it needs to be. Yeah, I think that looks approximately right. So this is down to the size that we need that to be. It is irrelevant really. But anyway, I now have those set. I have those dimensions annotated, and everything is locked. Right. So the main thing we now need to do is make these thin lines into a thick line, because obviously I need that to be a physical object that I can colour in the drawing afterwards. Now, to actually make this these lines coloured, I actually cheated a little bit. I made them fat, so I basically gave them an offset either side, and I then raised them a very small amount so they were just above the actual surface. It's basically like you stuck the tape on top. There is actually a very thin line on top. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use the offset command here again. So I'm just going to go into the offset command, select that line, and I'm going to go off in that direction by say 10 mil, or I could even say 15 mil just to make it a little bit sort of larger. So I can go again that side and say 1.5. Let's do the same on this one. So this one's a little bit thinner, so I'm actually just going to offset this one by 5 mil either side, so it'll be 10 mil thick in total. So one way and then one the other, make sure it's 5. There we go. Right. So now we have all those. I could get rid of those construction lines if I want to, but I don't have to. I can leave them as is. So this is our top-down sketch of our drawing. This should now match the actual sketch that's shown on the other web page. Let's just bring that one back up. Bring that one in. That should now match, which is right. The next thing I want to do is extrude some of the objects. So I'm going to hit click the green tick on this one here, I can give it a name actually. So let's do that. So hit the pencil, and I'm going to call this one base sketch. So that's basically the base. So now, if I rotate around, we have this absolutely thin object. If you're doing laser cutting or sort of any kind of CAD, you can export these things right now. So I can actually go in here and right click and hit export. I believe there's a export as DXF DWG. So this is quite a nice way if you're trying to design something, you can do your sketches and export your sketch out as a DXF or DWG. But what I want to do is I want to extrude this up. So we have 50mm high sides. So what we're going to do is go to the extrude and then select which object. So I'm going to click on the face, not any of the lines, just the actual face itself. So this is the actual center part, the actual object that I really want to bring up. And now it's asking me for the properties, and you can see by default it's 25mm, and you can see it's showing it coming up here. And again, there's a little arrow, and if I wanted to, I can invert it. But I know this should be 50mm. It won't change it until I click off that. So if I just take the focus away from that edit box, you can see that suddenly got a lot bigger. And there's all options to hit new, so it'll create a new surface, or you can add to or remove. It'll do surface intersections, that kind of thing. So yeah, click OK on that one, and that's come up. So now we have this, basically just the border. This is the outline here. So I actually want to make the base as well. So what I'm going to see is we actually, our base sketch is turned off by default. We can go back in and hit show it please. So let's go back into the top. So I actually want to extrude that and that, so I can just click each one as I want to, and I can say extrude those, and I can say, well, this one is say a 2mm thickness, and if you hit merge with all, it'll merge that extrusion with any other object, so it won't be a separate surface, it'll all be one object, which is what I want in this case. And you can see I'm adding as well here. So I can hit green tick on that one. That's good. So now we actually have holes in these objects. So we have a surface here, here, and here. And we have a hole in the middle here for this box. We have a hole here for this line. We have a hole here for that line. And we have a hole here for that kind of pad, that starting position. So what I want to do now is I want to extrude these up by the same amount. So this is, well, actually not that one. I want to extrude that surface and that surface. Make sure you see I zoomed in there to make sure I was selecting the surface and not the actual line in the middle or the edges. So these ones are going to be raised above the surface by a very small amount. I'm going to show you that as I do it. So at the moment, that is actually dropped down. This object here is 2mm thick. I want to now hit the extrude button, and I'm going to say raise that up by 5mm please. And then select off, and you can see it's now basically 2mm above, 3mm above that surface there. And I'm going to again hit merge with all because we want this to be all the same, and then hit OK. So now you can see we have these little raised pads effectively. Middle mouse button will pan, so I can middle mouse button click and drag around, and then rotate with the right mouse button and the, in this case, the left alt key to help me keep it level. Otherwise it'll sort of go off like that and be very hard to control. Okay, so we have the basics. The next thing is we have our feed the fish object here, which I want to make. And I'm going to do this in the same way initially. So I'm going to select this object and I'm going to hit extrude. Now this one is a box that is 400mm high. So I'm going to click here, type in 400mm. Again, tick merge with all, that's all okay. And if before I do that, I can rotate around. You can see exactly what you're going to get. As I said, you could invert that if you wanted to, and it'll go down rather than up. But no, obviously we want this up. And then click OK. That has now created this one object with this tower in the middle here. And that's what I want. I want this as all one object. Now here I want to do several things. So the first thing is, obviously it's a solid block. I want there to be a hole cut out in the middle from the top going down, and I want a hole cut out from the bottom going in. So in fact, actually, let's have a look. In fact, actually, yes, you can see it on this view here. Hole cut out from here, hole cut down like that. So So basically it's going to be a box with a hole in the top and a hole in the side. So let's do that. We'll start with the top. So if I hit top button here and look down on this, so now I can select that face. If I just rotate around, just make sure that I am actually definitely taking that face, which is good. And I want to draw on this. So I'm going to hit sketch once that surface is selected. So it's now telling me which face or surface I was selecting when I hit the sketch button. And I want to basically select everything here, click and drag, so all those four corners here. I want to then offset those in by a small amount. In fact, actually it hasn't taken those. I've actually got to manually, so I can't just select them. I actually have to click on each one, and I can click on each one as I go. There we go. And I want to bring those in by, say, 5mm. 5mm seems about right. That'd be about the thickness of the wood that we've got to work with. Click on that one. 5mm. That's good. Press enter. So now I have a sketch on the top of this object. So the next thing is just click OK on that one. Select that face, which is now, because this line that I've drawn on here has split that face, that surface, into two. It's selected, actually, a second, click off. So it has that face and that face. Now I want to drop this one down, so select the middle one and then use the extrude. Now I can then drop that one down. So if I say remove, it's going to go the other way, and it's actually going to remove out of this. And I want to go down, I believe it is, well, it's probably something like, well, it should be like 200mm, but we want a thickness of board in between them. So I'm going to drop this one down by 195mm. So there'll be a 5mm box in there. And again, just hit merge with all. So that has dropped this down 500mm from the top. I'm going to then draw a box on the side here and do the exact same, but just from the side. So click OK on that one. And you can see we have this object with a hole cut at the top. I want to do the same on this one. So click here. I'm going to just go to the front so it's a bit easy to see what's going on. And I want to hit sketch on that surface. And we're going to do the same. So I know I want to offset that line and that line. I can't do that. You can see I can only do a chain of lines. So I can't have that one. So I'm going to unselect that one. I'm going to do it one at a time. So I'm going to flick it in the other way. So that's going into the box. And again, I probably want to do this as construction lines now. I haven't actually clicked OK, and you can see that has now taken that. Because it's going too high, I don't want it to go all the way to the top. So I'm going to go OK on that one, and 5mm is fine. I'll do the same on the other side, so select that line, and it's going to go in, click OK, 5mm is fine. Right, so now I know I want to have a line that's 200mm from the top. So let's do that one as well. So click here, down, 200mm, and there we go. So that is where we want it to be. And now, undo that one, that's all fine. I want to make this part of it, I want to make that part of it non-construction line. So what I want to do is I want to trim this line at that position and trim this line at that position, and similarly get rid of this bit as well. So we can use these scissors, the trim button here, and I can just say, well, I don't want that one and I don't want that one. It's that easy. Just go over here, don't want that one, zoom in, make sure I'm getting the right line, and I don't want that one. Come out of the scissors, out the trim, and now I have just that line, and that line. I can untoggle the construction line, and I can then say OK, and I can basically just click that one face, hit extrude, and again I want to remove, and again I want this probably to be 195, so it doesn't go all the way through. I want it to be going up to, but not all the way through, so 5mm gap at the back. OK on that one. There we go. So now we have our feed the fish box all nicely designed as part of the whole model. And that's basically it for OnShape. It's now created this one part here. This is that part. I can then select that one, and you can see it's the whole object here. I can right click on it and say rename, and I can call this one feed the fish. There we go. And if I want to export this object, I can do that. I can right click and I can say export. So typically, if I was going to 3D print this, I would drop down here and say STL. But as I'm going into Blender, I probably want the collada file. It seems to prefer that. So I'm going to just get rid of that extra bit here. And yeah, options to download or download and store on the web, or yeah. So I just want the download. That's fine. Hit OK. And that's going to start downloading that file for me. There we go. So now it has downloaded that file. It's probably very small, so it'll only take a fraction of a second. Right, so we've done that. Come out of that one. I've got Blender already open, but I haven't done anything with it yet. This is just literally I've just loaded up Blender and it's got its default thing. I'm just going to click General. And you'll end up with this view. You'll end up with a box or cube in the middle here with a little light and with a camera. Now it creates all these things by default. The camera we want to keep, the light we want to keep, the box we don't. So we're going to left click that one and just hit the delete key. It's probably one of the most deleted objects ever, because every time you create a Blender file, you delete that most likely. Right, so what we want to do is we want to import into this scene our collada file that we just downloaded from OnShape. So we're going to go to the file menu, hit import, and it's the collada DAE. So bring this one in, go to my downloads folder, scroll down and hit feed the fish. That's the one we just created. Import collada. Okay, so we can then see this has been brought in and it will be to scale. And we can see here using the middle mouse button click, if I click and hold the middle mouse button, I can rotate around and orbit around the center point here. If I want to move the center point, you hold the shift key, so the left shift key down, and the middle mouse button clicks will then move you around rather than rotate you. If I want to recenter the view, I move the mouse where I want to recenter, hold the left alt and then click on that one and it'll center it. And I can sort of zoom in around, rotate around that object, zoom back out, center it again. So left alt, click and then let go. And then shift, pan, and just nothing, and just the middle mouse button, it'll rotate. So we can see initially we have our object in here, it will be to scale. And we also have it drawn in this very sort of a bluey kind of a color. So this is the default surface that it will have. And so what I want to do now is I want to click on the actual surface object itself, and down the bottom right here I have material properties. So I'm going to click this and we can see we've got this kind of a bluey kind of a color. I can select this and I can choose whatever color I want in here. So I'm going to go and say center white, make it just a little bit off white. Okay, now that hasn't made a change. It has actually changed the object, but it has not changed in this view. Now the reason for that is we are currently in the viewport shading with color solid. You can see that it says it down the bottom right there, solid on the right hand side. I actually probably want either viewport shading in material preview, which will show us the actual color that we've got here, or in the sort of render preview. And that's actually what you'll have with the lighting. So depending on how you want to work, you can just flick into those modes, but just be careful that if you're in viewport shading solid, it's not going to be showing you the colors that they're actually set to. So I'm probably going to go with this one because it just makes it a little bit easier to see what's going on. Right, so the next thing I want to do is I want to change some of the colors. So start off with this green stop line here. Right, so I can select off this now that we've got the base all colored as we need it to be in a single color. I can create a new material. So when we're coloring, we don't just paint it, you actually have to sort of change the material that it is. So you can say I want to create a material that's red. I think you can even do things like say a wooden material and things like that. Right, so what we want to do is we actually want to be able to select individual parts of this model, and if I click on here, it's always just going to select the entire object. So I want to be able to edit part of this, and we can do that one by changing the object mode. So I'm going to unselect it, drop down that object mode up here and say I want to go to edit mode. And there we can see the triangles, we can see little dots on the sort of edges, the nodes of these sort of triangles where all the triangles link to and things like that. Now the easiest way to select these things is to actually go into this option here, face select. So we have node or vertex select, which will allow us to pick sort of the points, but only the points. And we have the option here to edge select, which allows us to select the lines. But I actually want to say face select. So I actually want to say I've got two faces here. I want to say these two here because it's a rectangle with two triangles on it, two long thin triangles. So I want to say please change that to a new color. So I need to create one. So add a material slot and create a new material. So now I want to say, well, actually I don't want it to be white, I want it to be green. And I don't want it to be light green, I want it to be probably somewhere near that kind of a darkness, which is this one here. And you've got the option whether you want to specify in HSV like this, or in RGB, or even in hex. So it depends on how you sort of like to be able to edit colors. You can choose that one and then either click and drag those things around, or you can click and edit the value. But anyway, that's how you change those colors. Click off it to accept it. And that's created a material, but it has not changed the color of the model yet. Make sure you've still got the object you want to be colored selected, and then just hit the assign, and it'll assign that particular part there, that color. And then I can click off and it'll have taken it. So same for the other line here. I want to click and drag on that one, those two triangles there. And I want to create a new material again. So new material, so new slot, and then new material. And I want to give this one a sort of a darker kind of a grey, sort of nearer black, actually kind of like electrical tape. That will do, and then just hit assign on that one. So if I click off, we now have those. And we have this box over here, which probably wants to be the same green as the other one, so I can select this one, and I can use that material. It's already here, just pick that one and hit assign. Right, so those are those, and we then have this object here. So this is where we probably want to create a new material again. And I'm going to give this one a more sort of brown kind of a color, sort of a more woodeny kind of a color, depends on however we want to color this thing. That's all fine. So I've got my material here. Now I just need to select some of the objects, and we can do this all in one go, or I can sort of group select a few of them, hit assign on that one, making sure I'm clicked on that one, and I can say, well, okay, well then this lot in here needs to be assigned as well. I don't have to worry about over assigning because they all should be that color anyway. Hit assign, and then that last one on the back here, and assign. So click off it and make sure I've got all of those. I didn't do the bottom bit. Oh, I've missed some in the middle here, so I need to select all these. Oh no, see, I've got to be careful. So I'm going to go in here and select those first and hit assign. Rotate around that one, and well, these ones, assign. I've clicked on the wrong material there, that's why it's gone off. I need to actually make sure I'm clicking on the right one, make sure it's on that material. And I think it changed as I select that one, yes. So we've got to be careful, if you click off them, it will actually pick a different material. It'll pick the material that you've actually selected, so I've got to be very careful. So click off that one, that's fine, still in that material. And I believe that is everything on here coloured. Okay, now we can go back into object mode. It'll get rid of those triangles and we can see what we have. Right, so the next stage then is to add in my robot. So I could actually colour the edges, but I think I'll leave them as is. But I want my robot now. So we're going to bring in another model. So I'm going to go File and Import. This time I actually have it as an FBX file. You can bring in different formats if you want to. I believe this one is in my pictures. Yeah, I've got one on here. This one's called coloured, but I don't think it is coloured. I can just import that one. And it is huge, and it's rotated onto its back. So depending on how the system was designed or how the file was designed, you may find it comes through in the wrong scale, the wrong orientation, that kind of thing. So the first thing I want to do is probably rotate it so that it's actually pointing up. We can do that one here with the object properties. I can select that tab, and we have the location and the rotation and the scaling. So the rotation we have in each of the axes. So if I rotate around here, this is the x-axis, that is the y-axis, and obviously the z is up. Now I want to rotate this around, well, I probably want to rotate it around this line here, so it'll rotate up like that. So that's the x-axis rotation, and I can click on here and I can click and drag. Actually, you've got to be very careful here. Undo that one. Make sure I'm only selecting that object. There we go. So I can see, yeah, make sure you actually select the object you're working on. I just hit undo with the Control Z just to make sure I didn't actually accidentally tilt the entire model that we've got here. So yeah, select the object you want to rotate and just click and rotate this thing. So you can see that is the axis I want to rotate around, and it's getting close to 90 degrees. So I know I want this to be exactly 90. So I can left click on the text and I can just type in 90, press enter, and it'll move it. So that's got the rotation right, at least the initial rotation. Now I want to do the scale. So this thing is huge, so I probably want to scale it massively. Now I could type in the values here, I can change each one of these. This will do it individually, and I don't really want to do that. So undo, there we go. I want to just do this by sort of clicking and dragging. So if I hold the, or select the object, hit the S key, I can just type it, hit it once, I don't need to hold it, and I'm not pressing anything, I'm just moving the mouse. It's going to scale that. So I'm going to get it to approximately what I want it to be. I want it to be about something about that kind of a size. Okay, so now I know that's approximately the right size, and I want to move it so it's on this board. So again, this is where the X is. This is the position along the X axis. This is the position along the Y axis, and this is the position along the Z axis. So I'm going to start off by putting these all to 0. There we go. Left button and sort of click down there, and it'll center down here. So now you can see it is cutting through the surface. So depending on where the origin of the object was that you brought in, it may be above the surface, it may be below the surface, it may be exactly where you need it to be depending on how it was designed. This one, the origin is somewhere in the middle of this object. So I want to bring it up a small amount. So I'm going to click and drag on the Z and just very gently move it up and down until I think it is in the right position. There we go. That's that. Now this one here, I know that I want to just change the whole thing. So select that one object. I want to change it all to red. So I'm going to go back to its material properties. This one doesn't have any materials. I can then create a new material, and I can change it to say red. So again, I can choose the brightness of that red to say full red. That's fine. I'm going to go back to the object properties. Okay, so now I want to move this to its initial position. So we're kind of setting the stage here. I want this thing to be in the middle over here, and we're about to get into the animation. So I want to move it to where it should be when the animation starts. So let's do that one. And I can click and drag this to be approximately where it needs to be. There we go. And I'm going to middle mouse button that one and zoom in. I can then have a look at this and say, well, just a little bit more, say 0.5, I think that's -0.5, -0.5, right there. And, well, I think that's good enough. But it's facing the wrong way, so I need to move it. So this is where I want to rotate it. And this time I want to rotate it around the bar that would be going through its Z-axis. So let's click on the Z-axis and rotate it. And if you notice, if I go one way, it'll rotate in a negative direction. If I go the other, it'll rotate in a positive. Be a bit careful you don't just do sudden mouse movements, because it will suddenly just, you know, flip around like that there. So I want this to be, yeah, approximately 90 degrees. So I'm actually going to come off that one now, and I'm just going to click on the text and type in 90 and press enter, and it's moved it. So now I have my robot in its initial position. I will actually move that one just a little bit up that way, make it a little bit more centered. Okay, so I'm going to save this file now. I'm going to hit save. I'm going to call this one feed the fish. There we go. Just give it a save. Let's just call this one feed the fish -b, because I've created one before and I don't want to overwrite it. So yeah, hit save, and there we go. So I have found out Blender does occasionally crash. It is not the most stable of programs in my experience. So just make sure you save your file before you do certain things like rendering or animations and stuff like that. Mainly rendering, I think, causes it to just crash out sometimes, but yeah, just in case, you may as well just do regular saves. So I've got everything as I need it. Now I want to start its animation. Now the bottom down here, we actually have this animation sort of key. So this is where we kind of create keyframes. So if I click that little bar here and drag it up, this is kind of like your video editing kind of things, where we say, well, I've got a position up here and I can say throughout time. So this is the time frame. It's done in like frames. So if you assume you're working at a video sort of frame rate, that's 30 frames a second approximately. I believe actually when we export this out, it will be set to 30 frames a second. Then we know that from 1 frame to 30 frames, that's 1 second. From here to here is 2 seconds, 3 seconds, and so on. So that's how we know the sort of how long it takes for the robot to go through this kind of sequence. And we have our start frame and our end frame. So depending on the length of your animation, you zoom out on this thing and say, well, actually I want this to be a lot longer or a lot shorter, is up to you. And you can, same as other things, you can say, well, that should be 280 frames long, and it'll go to there. Okay. So the way animation works is we are going to create keyframes. So basically you're going to create a keyframe initially by pressing the I button, and that will ask us what type of keyframe. Now this is where we want to say, I want to lock well, in this case probably the rotation and scale, sorry, the rotation and location. Say yes, its location and rotation, that's the object I'm selecting, is going to be, that's where it needs to be at that marker. So this is very important that you keep that blue line where you need it to be. So I'm going to say after 1 second, I want the robot to be in front of this. So basically I want to move it to here. So I'm going to drag that one to frame 30, and then I'm going to move the robot. So I'm going to use the location X, I believe it is. Yeah, I can move that to where I think it needs to be, and I can sort of, let's line this up properly. In fact, actually, I know it needs to be 0 because that is dead in line with it. And then I can hit I again. And I can say, I want the keyframe to be the location and rotation of the robot now at that position. You can see you get a little dot here to show you that's a keyframe. And then I can say, well, over the next half a second or something like that, I want it to rotate and point towards it. So I can say, well, the next half a second, that would be 15 frames, that's there. So we got keyframe 45. I want to rotate it. And this is where I can say, click on this one, rotate it round to be whatever the rotation it needs to be. So that's going to be 180 degrees. There we go. And you can see it's currently amber, which tells me I've changed something. It's not keyframed yet. So I need to hit the I button again and say location and rotation. And you can see it's all gone that kind of a browny kind of a color. Okay. And then all we need to do is move this to here. So again, over the course of say 1 or so seconds, I need the robot to move from here to here. So I'm going to say, yeah, so that'll be half a second. So if I go 1, 2, 3, so we're at 90, frame 90. I'm going to go from here to here. That's in 1.5 seconds. I want it to do that. So again, move it. So in this case, it's going to be the Y axis that I'm moving. Move that up. And then get it to where I need it to be. I'm going to put a ball here. Actually, the ball's going to be there, isn't it? So I need to have driven through that ball, but I need to stop before I hit that green line, because that is the line at which I should never pass. So I'm going to stop just before it. Let's just see how granular that is. I can get it to, yeah, there. That'll do it. Gives us a line that we can see we haven't actually crossed it. So now I want to create a keyframe at frame 90 for its location and rotation. There we go. Hit I, location and rotation. Brilliant. So now we have those keyframes, and I want to make sure, file, save, make sure I've got it. Now we can drag this, and you see as I move it, it's interpolating the robot's position between those keyframes. So that's basically how the animation works. So I'm going to say grab that one, drag it over. As you can see, as it's going, that is the motion that it will take. Now I know now that my animation is basically going to be stopped by that position, so I can drag that right down and say, well, stop it, say frame 120. Just gives me a little bit more position after that. And I've got a little scroll bar here. I can zoom that in, give myself a bit more accuracy position on the frame positions, things like that. And there's little play buttons up here, so I can hit play and I can just have it loop endlessly. So that's in the sort of preview mode. That's how the robot is going to look. Now, depending on how you do the keyframes, you can have it accelerate, decelerate along here. You can make a keyframe halfway and have it going slow and then suddenly ramp up at the end. You can do those kind of things. You can also click and drag each of these keyframes here. So the next thing I need to do is I need to put a ball on that grey line. I'm going to move the robot into roughly the right position. Okay, so I actually now need to create a ball because I haven't made one in OnShape and I haven't got one to import. I'm going to create one. So I'm going to go to Add. I'm going to go to Mesh, and there's a UV sphere. That's what I want to do. It's made me a massive ball here that I can then scale. So again, can make sure I select off everything and then select just the ball itself and hit the S key once. I can then move the mouse and scale it to approximately the right size, something like that. Zoom in, I can always rescale that one, but that, yeah, rescale that just a little bit more. There we go. Okay, so I now have that ball in here. Again, it's cutting through the surface, so I know in the object properties button here, I can just drag that up so it is just above the surface. There. Okay, and I also need it to be here, so that's down on the y-axis. So let's move that over. There we go. Right, so I now have this ball. I actually need to color it, so I'm going to select it again, go to my materials, new material for this particular object, and then set the colors. So in here, this one, Nerf ball is kind of a yellowy kind of a color. That'll do. Right. So now I have that ball in place. Now you could mess around with the physics and get this to be some sort of rigid object and have the robot also as a rigid object and smash into it and roll it that way. You could go that way, but for this kind of animation, it's so simple. I pretty much just want to be moving this robot to the position on the keyframes down here, the frames. I can say where is it about to hit it? There. That's where it's about to hit it. So you can see if I select the robot, this shows me where those keyframes are. If I select the ball, it has its own set of keyframes. So I now need to select the ball, hit the I and say location and rotation. So I've made a keyframe of where the ball is right at the beginning. And I then need to move that where I think it needs to be hitting. So basically from that position here, I probably want to, well, actually, let's just say there. So frame 90, that is where the robot has stopped. I need this ball to definitely be in front of that position at that time. So let's go back to the location and let's go to the Y and let's move it to there. So it's definitely in front of the robot. As I move, oops, let's do that again. I forgot to hit the keyframe, so that's very important. It's a good lesson. Let's go forward, let's move it to where it should be in front of it. Hit I, keyframe the location and rotation. So there we go, so I've definitely done that one now. So that's what happens if you don't do that. But as I move this forward, you can see, well, it's because the keyframes by default are working off sort of interpolating in a different way. So we can go to right click and interpolation mode. There's like a Bezier curve, linear or constant. I think by default it's Bezier curve. So it kind of accelerates, gets to a speed and then decelerates as the interpolating rather than just interpolate between those two over that frame. So what we can do is we can add in lots more keyframes. We can just say, well, depending on how accurate you need it to be, I'm going to move this one to there. Hit I, keyframe, keyframe the location rotation, go a bit more, seems to be okay. Yeah, to be honest, that's now pretty good. But from here on out, I want that to then basically at that position I want this object to have got into here. There we go. Keyframe that one, location and rotation. So you can see, because I've now changed the end position, the interpolation has changed. So I need to add in a couple more keyframes. So I'm going to move this one to make sure that it's in front of it at that position. Keyframe, location, rotation, hit the I key. Let's just go through. Yeah, that looks bonk. Yeah, it seems to be stopping here. So let's make sure that that is still keyframe. And there we go. Right, so we can watch that animation and see how it looks. It seems to be stalling here, so I can hit the pause key and I can just say, well, yeah, it seems to be, the ball doesn't seem to be doing what I would expect it to do. So this keyframe here looks like it's wrong. So if I select off those keyframes, they are no longer the sort of yellowy amber color. I can select one of them and I can say, well, get rid of that keyframe. Now it's only interpolating between these. Let's see how that looks. Yeah, I possibly want to get rid of that one as well. And have it like it's basically hit it and gone like that. There we go. Hit play. That looks okay. And that's how you do this kind of animation. That's pretty much it. So let's hit File and Save. So we're happy with that kind of position. The next thing we can do is reposition the lights, reposition the camera. Obviously the camera's up here. It's looking down at an angle like that. We can actually look through the camera by hitting this button here, toggle the camera view. Click that one. That is what the camera is going to see. And this is the camera's location, I believe, if I select the camera up here. So these are all the objects in the scene. Select the camera. That's it. I want to move it. I actually want to get it closer, so let's drag a couple of these, get it much closer, keeping it centered because I'm coming in at an angle, and then drop that down, keep going, something like that, roughly centered, drop that down. I'm going to go out a scotch, up a little bit. There we go. Okay, so that is my scene. I can change the coloring. I can click on the light. I can right click on that and adjust light power. See, as I move the mouse now, it's getting less. Ooh. Yeah, something like that. I can also right click, adjust the light radius. Just move the mouse across the screen to actually do that one. Get it roughly how I want it. Again, don't forget to hit save. Now I found if you let the animation play all the way through at least once, so beginning now, going through, there we go, hit pause. Now all we need to do is go to the rendering options, the output options. This tells you where it's going to output, how it's going to output. So in this case it's a PNG. I want that to be in a video, so FFmpeg. I want the encoding container, I don't know what that is, but I want MPEG-4, so MP4 file. And then you've got the quality, so medium quality or lossless or perceptually lossless. Doesn't really matter. Basically, just export this however you want it to. Again, I'm just going to go File and Save. Make sure that's all as I need it to be. I'm going to hit play just to make sure it doesn't crash on me. Make sure it goes all the way through the rendering once. There we go. And then hit Render button and hit Render Animation. And then it'll go through frame by frame, rendering the animation as you need it to be, and it'll create that file, that MP4 file, in the output folder. In this case it's just TMP. And that's it. So from creation of the model in OnShape to exporting it as a Collada DAE file, to importing it with other objects and creating objects, and then animation. That is the step-by-step process of creating an animation like this in Blender. Thanks for watching.